Welcome back to What Matters This Week. I'm Lauren Maloney. Joining us today is Dr. Haley McGowan. She is the Child, Adolescent, and Family Unit Medical Director of the Vermont Department of Mental Health. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tough topic, and I understand you're new to the job, just a few weeks, but you must feel the heaviness of the moment too. I mean, how could you characterize what we're going through as a nation?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that it's definitely affecting all of us on so many levels. As a professional, I feel it in terms of providing mental health support to kids and families. I feel it as a parent. I think we feel it as a community, and certainly as a Department of Mental Health, it's been a major topic of conversation in recent weeks. So it's the unthinkable, and we really do our best to manage it and compartmentalize, but I certainly don't want to minimize what everyone's going through, especially the kids and families affected.
100%. Yeah, this is not an easy topic, but an important one to have right now. When you hear people say mental health issues cause these school shootings, what is your response to that, and how do we respond?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I mean, I think that prompts a pretty big response in me, to be honest, because I think it's really important to think about these things in a multifactorial way. I think when events like school shootings are so challenging for us to wrap our heads around, they seem unthinkable, they're emotionally overwhelming, and we want pretty easy answers and solutions. So it's not surprising that, society reduces the conversation. And one of the common simplifications, I think, is attributing violent actions to mental illness. I think it creates a narrative that's easier to digest, but it's a missed opportunity to sort of discuss the bigger picture, can draw attention away from the harder conversations, as this is a big, sort of societal issue with many contributing factors. And I think it's also really important that we make a distinction between mental health and mental illness, especially mental illness that leads to violence. Their mental health and behavior, I think, are related, but it's not a simple cause and effect. Mental illness, and this includes things like anxiety and depression. Like I said, it's multifactorial and much more often separate from, not indicative of criminality or violence. You can have poor mental health, but without meeting the threshold of a diagnosable mental illness. It all exists on a continuum. And I don't think anyone would argue that someone who enacts a heinous crime, like a school shooting, is mentally well. But it's so much more nuanced and complicated than sort of that small statement that this is all due to mental illness.
This probably isn't an easy question to answer, or doesn't have an easy response, but why is there always the mental health aspect that we hear after these? Is it a matter of the country or somebody needs something to blame? Is that why?
I think blame is one way to put it. I think it just makes it a little easier to digest. I mean, it seems unthinkable, but the real challenges, like just the sort of the level of involvement and teamwork and collaboration that it takes to address all of the things going into something like this, or how a person, enacts something heinous like this, it's almost too much to comprehend. Sometimes it can feel really overwhelming. And when we're already overwhelmed by the topic material, sometimes it's easier to just make an other, the other is that person with a mental illness. And, that it makes the conversation simpler and gives everyone something to sort of, offload it to.
Let's talk about kids right now. Many are just getting out for the summer. So maybe there is some kind of a relief or safety net in that, the weather is better and people can hang out with their friends, and they're not in school anymore where unfortunately all of this heaviness is hanging on us. That said, do we use this opportunity to talk to our kids? Do we have little conversations until the fall? Do parents wait? And none of these are handled, right?
Mm-hmm. I think you're right on that. There is some relief right now in having the summer. And I will say, just from being a clinician and working in the emergency room doing child psychiatry, we do hit a big lull in the summer, and I think it's because there's just a little more freedom to be kids. There's less pressure in that moment, and now we can perhaps add the added benefit of feeling a little safer, maybe. But I do think that the time and sort of that more relaxed, calm atmosphere that comes with summer is a great opportunity to talk about some of these things. I think it's very important to take the lead of your kids, and sort of, create prompts or opportunities to talk about, their emotional well-being, or, all the really intense things that come along with this. But I also think it's important not to force it. So it's really, I think we always say parents are the experts on their own children. And so with that in mind, it's looking for those moments to check in and say, how are you doing? How is this affecting you? And even like you said, saying, does it feel better being out of school for a little bit? I could understand why it might've been hard to separate your thoughts from things that have been happening, in other parts of the country.
Let's talk about age. How do we handle this with younger children, because their minds are still growing and it's a lot?
Yeah. And I think it's about age, and it's also just about different kids, right? Different kids express or need different things. Just like adults, we all express our emotions in very different ways. And so it's really important about following kids' leads. But with all ages, I'd say it's about helping kids express their feelings so that they don't feel alone in holding like really challenging emotions. So, when we're talking about little kids, let's say under 5, they probably don't understand the information that's coming their direction, maybe parts of it, but not, probably not just quite how heavy it really is. But they're highly sensitive to the way their caregivers are feeling, and depend almost entirely on the adults around them to feel better. And so, I think what youngest kids need more than anything is attunement. They need adults who are paying attention to differences, and maybe they're not verbalizing things, but maybe some of their artwork has become a little different because of things they've seen or overheard, or maybe they're withdrawing a little bit, or their sleep has changed somewhat, or they're a little clingier than usual. And I think it's so important for parents and educators and caregivers of any kind to be attuned to that and offer space to address it. The most important thing, I think, especially with small ones, is reassuring them that they're safe, whatever that means to them. They can, make sure they know that there are safe and healthy adults in every, area of their life, whether that's at school or at home or in the community. And then just like I said, encourage conversation about emotions and labeling emotions. You have to leave a lot of space and patience for little ones to sort of work through those kinds of questions, but let their questions guide the information you provide, recognizing that it might not always be about talking. Sometimes it's about other ways of expression.
What do you tell parents? Because as adults, we don't have the answers either.
No, that's so true. And I think we are all struggling with really intense feelings during these events, and trying to attend to our children's mental health. When we're doing that, it's just as important that we're attending to our own as we seek to support our kids. So, like, particularly when you're about to have a hard conversation, you might be feeling fear or anger or numbness, sadness, hopelessness. The first thing you need to do is give yourself permission to feel those things and know that those are 100% valid ways to feel. And there's no judgment on any of that, but even just labeling the emotions and acknowledging your own experience helps create a more calm state to go into conversations with your kids, and also lets them know, that you are having an emotional experience as well. So I guess the in a nutshell, it's really being in tune with yourself and what you need before thinking about the best way to support your kids.
What about teachers? Because I feel like, and we've heard so many stories about teachers, in the past 3 weeks or so, speaking out, and they've had so many cathartic experiences about what they went through, and what teachers have to do now to prep classrooms a different way than they did 10 years ago. Is there a certain way that they can kind of feel embraced during this hard time too?
I mean, however we can possibly embrace teachers, we need to, because they are holding so much. it's not only having to go through whether it's, emergency drills or holding the emotions of these kids as they, come to the classroom every day. It's also their own, navigating their own emotions around it, their own fear, their own anger. And they're just how difficult the job already is, right? We rely on teachers for so much, and often they are the ones who are most in tune with kids. They spend all day with these, with kids, whatever age it may be. And they tend to have a really good sense of when a kid is struggling. And that also probably feels like another level of burden, kind of keeping an eye on all these kids and not necessarily having the bandwidth to do it. So I think it's another element of like, we have to take care of the caregivers and the educators in order to allow them to take care of the kids. So, I just encourage parents also to be vocally supportive of teachers in how they support families. It's really a bedrock, and I can't imagine what it's like, day after day to just go through knowing you already have this very hard job of educating kids, and then this added burden on top of it.
You mentioned added burden. Kind of as an aside, the pandemic has kind of brought about so many new challenges when it comes to everything we do that maybe we didn't expect. But we heard about kind of an overburdened mental health system at the beginning, where there were some teenagers or youngsters needing to go to the emergency room seeking help, and there weren't enough beds. How is the state progressing on that front? And are we seeing developments?
I do think so, yes. And I'll say, I have a very unique perspective. This is a partial position here with Department of Mental Health, but I'm also an emergency room child psychiatrist in Burlington. And so I really see both sides of this and know what it's like to hold kids and families waiting for a very long time in the emergency room for placements. And I think it is moving forward. It's never going to be as fast as we would like, but a good example of something that ideally will help keep children out of the emergency room in a more preventative way is something that just launched this week called the Vermont Child Psychiatry Access Program, which is, for a long time, Vermont's primary care providers and pediatricians have really been sort of craving and needing faster access to child psychiatry or just mental health supports for their patients in general, because like teachers, they hold so much more than they really should be expected to. And so, it's just an example of something actionable that really did move forward recently, like just this week launched, and it provides rapid access to consultation by child psychiatrists, and usually in a matter of minutes over the phone. And they can assist with diagnosis, medication management, like psychotherapy recommendations, community-based referrals. So while that doesn't, immediately create beds, which we would all like to do, it maybe will help prevent the need for so many beds.
Okay. Dr. Haley McGowan, I appreciate your insight. This is not an easy conversation to have, but I think an important one, and I hope we help some viewers out there maybe when it comes to their next conversations too. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.